second of today's videos, I'm going to now work through the remainder of Cobley with some observations and some questions. So we'll pick up on page 229 and continue through to the end, which is page 242. So the remainder of chapter 9, pages 229 to 42, and I'll ask 5 questions along the way. So let's begin now. As Cobley does in this section, he talks about the British philosopher Galen Strawson, who in 2 publications from 2004 advanced a philosophical critique of narrative projection as being both sentimentalizing and universalizing, and thus leading to a fabrication of both psychological insight and ethical self-awareness. So quite a deep level and searching critique of the tendency towards narrative interpretation. Overall, says Cobley, not just directly as a consequence of this attack, but as part of a broader shift, what we've seen since, roughly speaking, say the first decade of this new millennium, a retreat from investment in both cognitive and societal domains that have been otherwise characteristic of newly developing post-classical narratology. So a shift away from those 2 fields, at least as believing that they have genuine scientific insight, and that regarding them as needing a more cultural, holistic approach. So here then is my first question. Question 1. Renewed interest in narrative as a sign system is denoted, according to Cobley, by which German word? So renewed interest in narrative as a sign system in this last decade could be said to be denoted by one particular German word. So what is that word? Question 2. How many phases of sign-based modelling does Thomas Sebeok acknowledge? How many phases of sign-based modelling does Thomas Sebeok acknowledge? Cobley refers to the work of several scholars who regard narrative as a schematic outgrowth of the interaction between the newborn infant and their caregiver, as conditioned by 3 features: gesture, language, and most important for us, music. Question 3. The relationship between or among gesture, music, and language emphasizes the intonational rhythm developed between parent and child. What term do Delafield Butt and Trevarthen in their 2013 publication give to this association? So what term do Delafield Butt and Trevarthen as authors in 2013 give to this intonational rhythm between a newborn infant and caregiver? For the infant, mimetic expression, that is, expression which seems to mimic the way the world is, and also sympathetic action, find a ritual performative structure in the form of narrative. So the fundamental ways that we behave, which mimic the external world, and then actually articulate, give form to our feelings about the external world, find a ritualized performance structure in the form of narrative, as Cobley argues. Here then is question 4. What 4-part musical dialogue do Trevarthen and Delafield Butt in 2012 identify as suggestive in this regard? So this is interesting for us, that a 4-part musical dialogue, these 2 authors in 2012, Trevarthen and Delafield Butt, identify this as the particular sort of dialogic bond between child and caregiver. So I need just a single word terms that describe each aspect of that musical dialogue, and there are 4 of them. Cobley continues by noting that a kinetic association, so that's to do with our physical movement in the world, can be understood in relation to the way in which mind emerges from matter. But this also reinforces a threefold sequence which generates narrative as an evolutionary phenomenon. That is, in other words, it is not just a purely mechanistic or deterministic, formulation. So we're talking about a threefold sequence which generates narrative as an evolutionary phenomenon whereby our conscious mind emerges from our material, physical, kinetic sense of possibility. And this, of course, we're not fully conscious of as an infant. It's just what we do rather than what we think we can do. So question 5. Why does Thomas Sebeok, in his 1979 publication, assert that narrative conveys survival benefits? Why does Sebeok, 1979, as Cobley relates the argument, assert that narrative thus conveys survival benefits on humans? So just 5 questions. I will post these today. That'll be Friday the 3rd of April. So I'll be looking, as I said, for responses by Monday. Then there will be just one exercise, which hopefully we'll be able to complete by roughly the middle of next week. And then we'll be thinking about the first submission, and I will give you more instructions on that. Okay, so just let me have the answers to these 5 questions at the beginning of next week, and then we'll move on from there. All right, hope you have a decent weekend, given the limitations, but I think the weather is better today. The weather on Friday is just awful. All right, well, let's look forward to Saturday and Sunday as actually giving us at least some sort of warmer air to feel comfortable in. All right, bye for now.